All right, how are you doing? He's hoping that all is well with you from wherever part of the world you are watching us. Thank you for making time on the program. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. And of course, right here in Focus, we bring on the table various topical issues and of course with an aim of trying to put perspective into them and just make sense out of them. Tonight on the program, a very controversial topic in one or another according to public opinion, and also who is right to actually have this conversation going on. This is what has been going on social media, and I definitely respect your opinion and your views, but of course there's always two sides of the coin when it comes to these matters, and so that is where we'll leave it at. So if you want to be part of this conversation tonight, regardless of who you are or where you are, simply tweet us using the hashtag InFocusRW. We'll be happy to read your tweets in the course of the program. So we're going to be looking at the issue of sex workers, and it has been a dilemma for many countries across the world. Of course, we want to look at the Rwandan perspective as far as this issue is concerned. How do we deal with sex workers as far as bringing them off that trade, and when they're brought off that trade, how do we keep them off the streets if they usually work from the streets or wherever they do this particular work from? This is what we'll be talking about, plus of course their rights and what really needs to be done for them as far as their rights are concerned. Let me bring on board my panelists on the program. We have none other than Murangira Jean Bosco, who is the Director, Women Economic Empowerment at the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion. Thank you so much, Bosco, for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Also with us on the program, an institution, actually a non-governmental organization that has been working closely with sex workers. He's none other than Chris Sengoga, who is the Human Rights Officer, Health Development Initiative. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure. Sure.
Right, so as we even start this conversation, there's already controversy around who needs to be talking about this particular topic. Should it be the women? Should it be the men? Should it be both? Already we're having this conversation going on. And I want to hear from you, Jean Bosco, as a person who is in charge of women economic empowerment at the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion. Who are the right people to have this conversation?
Thank you, Anangwe. First of all, I can say that every responsible person is the right person to talk about this because it's a concern, something to be dealt with. But when you talk about gender, we talk about possibilities, equal opportunities, equal benefits, and equal challenges that can be shared. Either a man or a woman can be
able to
handle
this conversation.
Yes.
Let's get into it because we do not have much time to actually delve into that issue. I really totally agree that indeed it was very important to have a lady on the platform. But of course, due to one of the challenges I want to talk about, and I need to hear your thoughts, Chris, is the issue of stigma. I tell you the truth, for real, without fear of any contradiction. I did approach some ladies, and we had wanted to have either a former sex worker or one who's practicing or someone who's able to speak for them, who is a lady. But of course, it was very difficult. Some told me that I am afraid to come on national television because people will start discriminating me, they'll start stigmatizing me. Let's talk about how deep this challenge of stigma is as far as sex workers are concerned in Rwanda.
Thank you so much. Really, as you are saying, I think we had a chat, I think in the afternoon, and I was also chatting with one of the leaders, actually in Nyanza, and she was like, no. If maybe you can just get my voice, but I can talk publicly. I have a family, I have friends, the whole Rwandan society will see me as someone who has gone beyond the culture. So stigma has been there. And it's, I think, looking at Rwanda in particular, of course, they do practice that sex work, but coming out to say it is very hard. And during the time when the law was paneled in the parliament, it was very hard for them to come out and speak because we are advocating for their rights. But we could say it could be better if you come out and raise a voice for yourselves. They were like, no, unless you just get my voice, but I won't appear.
I cannot appear.
Yes.
Jean Bosco, how then does this make it easy or hard for you as a government to actually try and deal with these people who practice, sex work? from that perspective of the stigma, not being able to come out and speak for themselves, but having to have someone else to speak on their behalf. And as he says, it's easier for people to believe in you when you actually come out and demand for your rights yourself.
Thank you, Adonge. I think, first of all, this act should be looked at a two-way. First of all, I see it as a demand-driven. If these people who demand this act were not there, I think even those who could be willing to offer the service could not be there. That's the starting point.
So you're saying that if sex workers did not have clients,
yes,
then sex work could not exist at all?
Sure.
Explain that.
And this, what does it mean? It means that though it's perceived, I was seeing some of the tweets taking it as having a female face, which is not true. They cannot do it alone. So that's why I had to come up saying that it has a demand-driven hidden agenda. So you, me, gents, we need to accept and commit that we are part of people who are driving this. And if we become changed, then there should be measures and mechanisms to have it reduced. Number two, as you are saying that they fear to come out and demand what we are calling their rights, it means there are other best alternative options that they can venture in, which the government had put in place. And that's what we are calling upon. There are many other best alternatives. And I think most of this, if it's done with a consent, if I say consent, if not a minor, it's agreed upon, it will be paid for. So if it's done with a consent, people should come out and get the best year's alternative options that are in place and embrace
Other
them.
than sex work.
Sure.
Chris, I would like to hear from you because he says we have alternatives. The government has actually produced or worked out alternatives to sex work. So they need to come out and leave the practice and come and take up these opportunities that the government has actually provided. But the sad reality is that today as we speak, sex workers still exist, despite what he says as opportunities being available. Why is this?
It is really very difficult unless you do a research or a survey and know why they do it. Because sex work has been there since mankind. It has been there during the age of Ella, during Greece time, during Roman time, and even today. Even in the countries that have developed, UK, France, and other countries, where they have incentives for their citizens, they don't come out to leave sex work. And that's the reality. Whenever we meet them, because for us, of course, the empowerment we do is legal and health, because we want them to be treated fairly as part of the Rwandan society. But it's very hard to say that they have refused to come out of sex work. And sometimes it's hard because you tell them, I don't know, maybe we could have another perspective on why they don't want to come out of sex work. Because for us, we empower them because we have seen that consistently the number is rapidly increasing.
What do they tell you are their reasons? When you speak to them, when you meet them, I saw you have been organizing seminars to try, and you've even spoken of speaking directly to one of their leaders who's in Nyanza. When you tell them there are these opportunities, leave this work that you do, the sex work, what do they tell you are their reasons as to why they do not want to leave sex work?
That would really complicate issues because for us, we don't tell them, we don't have that one to tell them, please come out. Because what we have realized is that since 2010, if you look at demographic numbers, if you look at the research, the survey, it shows that the number is increasing. And the civil society organizations, even the government, takes part to at least rehabilitate, but they don't. And whenever for us we reach them, we have to tell them they have a right to go for medical checkups. They have a right not to be subject to torture. And at the end of the day, of course, we don't ask them, why are you a sex worker? Because that looks to be a discrimination, which brings in a controversy now. Because if you are telling them you have a right to go out for medical checkup, we work with Rwanda Biomedical Center and Ministry of Health. They have prioritized that sex workers should be dealt in particular because of their particularity.
Right.
If you look at the percentage of HIV prevalence in the general population, it's 3%. In sex work, it is 45.8. And as my colleague was saying, of course, who demands? They are buyers. Sex workers, both female and male, they are sellers. So unless, and we can't know who is a buyer. A buyer might be among us or someone else. So that's why it is very hard to weigh and say, you please come out.
Please come out. Jean Bosco, I mean, I'm interested in hearing your take, speaking from a government point of view, on this whole issue. Is it really a big deal for Rwanda? Is it a dilemma for Rwanda? Is Rwanda struggling with this issue, or what is the state of affairs if you look at it from a government point of view in handling this issue? Because some people might be out there and saying, this is a non-issue. It's a non-starter. Why are we talking about this? Is this something that the government sits down and says, we have a challenge here?
First of all, I think the stake of government is that the Rwanda we want is a Rwanda where every citizen can have a decent job to do, can live in harmony, and can have a dignity. And looking at this particular segment of population, first of all, we embark on prevention.
Yes.
For those who have not entered this, not a profession, but this act. Number two, how do you rehabilitate those who have already in the act? That's why you're saying that we have to create best alternative options and encourage them to shift from this segment to decent jobs. So apart from the health perspective, there are other socio-economic integration options where they can be grouped into cooperatives, where they can have proximity businesses around their communities. There are very many other opportunities that they can embrace and then venture in. So our stake is that we have very good laws that are non-discriminatory in nature, that are accommodative and gender sensitive. So we call them to embrace the available opportunities in their decentralized entities. But number two, when you see this vis, it's kind of urban setting. It's most popular in cities, mostly in Kigali, in these 6 other emerging cities.
So you want to say in the rural areas, sex work is
I can't say that it's zero, but yes, sure. So what do you mean? So when we are bringing these opportunities, so we have also to deal with the challenges in the urban setting, creating more opportunities that can deal with this entire population, but also single out these particular segments of the population.
He spoke of the demand-driven business. So what would be the appropriate way of, because he feels that if we actually cut out this demand, then we will have dealt with this issue. Do you see this as a solution?
I may say no. Of course, borrowing the experience from Sweden, in 1999 they enacted the same law that we have been discussing here in Rwanda to criminalize the buyers so that the sellers maybe...
They lack business.
They lack business. But it never worked in Sweden because for them they aimed, because they looked at discrimination, they looked at gender-based violence and sexual violence, because men, if in societies where sex work is highly criminalized, you'll find that men, or those who are buying, tend, of course, to have big negotiating power. So they take the advantage, and there they can abuse. And for Sweden, they tried that. They thought at least sex workers could be eradicated from the street, but up to today,
they're still there.
Yeah.
I think there is no one way approach that you can come up with a solution. That's why we say that it calls upon every intervention to deal with what is on the ground. Number two, it requires a lot of sensitization. He's talking about Sweden and the other developed countries. But let us look at our local context. When we talk about a girl in our culture, they normally say, Umwari w'u Rwanda. What do they mean? I'm failing to get the right word, but say maybe this sacred person who has...
Pride of the country.
Exactly. What does it mean? This thing has to continue to be uprooted, has to be valued, this integrity of the person.
Yeah, but when you say that, then it discriminates the ladies. It makes it look like it is them who are the problem.
That's number one.
Yes.
We are coming also to the part of the boy. They also have these core values that make them the upbringing. So, but now, how do we now deal with this integration of the modernization and all these other things we're talking about? Then you have to play and strike the balance. How do we bring those who are trying to go out of this so that they can follow and take up the available opportunities that can be embraced them, and then they have families.
So have you been striking that balance so far? How have you been doing that as a government?
Of course, as I told you, first of all, when you see what has been happening along all these years, was to create institutional frameworks. Number two, we have to deal with some of the legal instruments that were discriminatory in nature. That's why I must salute our current honorable members of parliament. The laws we see in place today, they are gender-friendly, they are gender-sensitive, and they are pro-people laws that are in place. And number two, we had to extend opportunities to the proximity of the beneficiaries. When you see the economic benefits that are in place, for example, we take of MFIs, financial institutions. There is no sector in the world that doesn't have at least one financial institution. Number two, when you trace what was happening in the past, for example, for a woman or a girl to have a bank account, it required sometimes to have a consent of a parent or a husband, which is a going case now.
So this is for those who
Number two, I am coming to that.
Yes,
Number two, there are some benefits that you can say that have been put in place for the people who are less privileged. For example, we have the Women and Youth Access Finance Strategy, where a woman with a small viable project proposal can be given a grant of up to 75% without collateral. And if she lacks 25%, they can come into a group or a cooperative, and they have what we call solidarity guarantee. Number three, we have some people who do not have opportunity to be educated, semi-educated, depending on history. We have at least 2 business development advisors who can help them to design viable projects, and the government can pay. When we talk about the benefits that are on the ground, what we encourage all these people is just to come and embrace.
Right, come and embrace. Chris, I want you to be non-diplomatic. He has spoken about very many projects, very many ideas, very many things that they have been able to produce or provide as a government. But you, as a person who has been closely monitoring in your research as a non-government organization, during the time that you interact with them, are these things viable for them? Are they working out for them? Where are the gaps?
It would be really hard to determine if they do work or they don't work for them. But as we were discussing, something was running into my mind, and I was asking myself, why then the number is increasing?
It's still there, yes. Despite all these things that you're saying.
Yeah, despite all that. And maybe that calls for maybe a holistic approach, maybe an intervention that is more than what we have been doing. Because
so you are diplomatically trying to say that all those interventions are actually not working?
It would be hard, because if they are working, I would wonder why the numbers are increasing. And of course, as he said, it is very common in urban areas, less common in rural areas, but it's still in upcountry, smaller cities, you find that the number tends to increase. Yes. This year, if you have maybe found like 400 that have come up for medical treatment, the next year you find they have increased.
So it is still increasing.
And sometimes it is, of course, if you ask why do you increase, that's discrimination.
Right. Jean Bosco.
And you would, of course, let another institution that deals with economic empowerment to come in and at least
I think your interventions are not working.
I think let us be honest on this point. This is a very complex nature of thing that you can't see using a one-way approach. Because of what? First of all, I think people who tend to come in, they see it as a lucrative thing that can bring in remuneration at ease. Forgetting that there are health costs, there are other negative effects that can come along with this. Number two, we are now living in a modern world where things are being much put on advertising, where people can see it as just something like a walkaway and forget all these other negative effects that can come along with it. So we have, I can't say many examples, we have people who have embraced what's on the ground and they have taken a step from where they have been. We have social programs that are on the ground support those who are less privileged.
But Chris says a very
number
important
three,
thing. Chris says a very important thing, that despite all those things you're listing down, the numbers are still increasing.
That's what I say. Actually, that's maybe the starting point. You said this has been of ages and of the millennia. It has been there ever since. Actually, I come not from my personal view. I come even to fear something that we've talked about even in the Bible. When they thought that this was the thing or the concern for the Sodom and Gomorrah that was causing a lot of trouble by then. So it's something you cannot talk in 1 hour and have a solution. So on the ground, I can say that we have at least that there are programs that are targeting every citizen of the country. And they are non-prohibitive in nature. Number two, we are always calling or sensitizing the population to come and take up. We are always there to give a supporting hand. There's nowhere they can knock on, they find the door is closed.
Right, but it has been difficult for them to come out and actually
Number
speak.
three, the difficulties they are seeing to come out and speak,
Yes.
it means it stigmatizes their dignity, which we are saying they are best as alternatives that they can embrace and take up.
Right. Chris, I mean, listening to Jean Bosco say these things, I would love to hear from you. What sort of messages do they send you to go out and speak about on their behalf when you meet them, as you earlier on said, that you can tell Jean Bosco and whoever else is listening that is in a position of authority, what exactly do they want? Because we can't have someone from that trade here in the studio. What would you say that they want badly?
First of all, in most cases, of course, there is stigma, as we're saying, and there is rejection from the family once they know that they are sex workers. And in the respective communities where they come from, of course, they do hide that they do sex work. And at the end of the day, you know, sex work is criminalized.
Yes.
Currently in our penal code.
Yes.
So which makes them, of course, fear to come out. And in most cases, they face discrimination, that's one, even regards treatment, medical treatment, and even some, I may say, some abuse. Of course, when they find them on the streets, they do bank them in a car, take them, but of course, enforcement has been hard, not only in Rwanda, but globally. And when I talk to them, they say, of course, they took us, we spent like 1 month, and we were released. So what do you want then? And they say, we wish we could be treated fairly. But of course, I would wish they themselves to come and say, we need to be treated fairly, because they are the ones who are being mistreated. But still it is hard. But in all cases, they say, we have been having some talks on family planning, how to prevent or be treated for STIs. But we needed also to know our rights in regards to medical treatments, regards to detention procedures. And in all cases, that's what they say.
Right, right. And when they say this...
I think we need to agree on one thing. I think this segment of the population is not denied of any service that they go to approach for.
Yeah, but he says these are some of the reality, the real problems that they face.
I think if any citizen of this country goes to the hospital to get family planning, whatever, they will access them.
Is it true? Is it true, Chris? I mean, I want to hear from you, because we cannot just throw blanket statements.
The way he's mentioning
Yes.
is like they are coming and they are denied of some services because of ABCZ, which I stand not to agree with.
And you don't agree with what he says?
Number two, I don't see it in my country, Rwanda, where a citizen can come for a particular service that opened the public and being denied because of ABCZ.
100% you feel there's no such a case?
I need a practical example so that I can benchmark it to agree. I don't see it happening.
But do
otherwise,
do you get out of
I
your
agree
way?
of the stigma
Yes,
that
yes.
people can just shy away from taking a step. This happens not only to these people, it
Yes.
happens to everyone.
Yes,
For example, if we take up about HIV testing,
Yes.
not only these people can shy away from
Anybody
going-
can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. But the
I
question
don't
is-
see it as saying that because of ABCZ, they are being denied of the service. Let us be honest on this.
So the question is, because from your position as the Director of Women Economic Empowerment, probably someone would be wondering, if you're saying you've never heard of such a case, do you go beyond or out of your office to actually meet these sex workers and talk to them and hear what their problems are?
Talking about socio-economic integration, we have a number of cooperatives or people who have decided to shift on this trend and have took a best alternative. And they have taken a step, and they are witnesses that you can see that they said this was dignifying our dignity. We are now taking up economic options.
So
and
you
we are
talk to
aware
the
of-
ones who have already converted
Number
and
two,
crossed. Yes.
we hear testimonies.
Yes.
Testimonies from different people who have been in this act. But most of the testimonies, they're saying, though we go there seeing as a lucrative business, we find it to be totally a mess. Totally a mess. Of which, if we're saying that they are being denied of some of their rights, not true, but they are somehow trying just to shy away from coming broad day and say, we want this and this. Of which, if they could come out, those health services, economic opportunities,
They would get them.
and other related options, not they will get, it's their right.
It is their right. Chris, I mean, he's saying you are lying to us. You're not actually...
He's not
presenting
lying.
The real situation on the ground, that it can't happen. It is not true that they are denied because they came to access those services and they were told, we can't give you because
I don't
we're
see it happening.
stigmatizing you.
I don't see it happening.
Yeah, sometimes the case in point is hard, but I would relate that with the case in UK, where the Queen...
What about here? We're talking about Rwanda.
No, it's just a case, I'm not talking about sex workers themselves. It's a case where the Queen stood and told a man that don't shoot the family. So the man shoot the husband and said, I have not shot the family. So if you kill the husband and you say you have not shot the family, sometimes it's hard.
Some of us, it is hard to actually connect
when you
dots in the
philosophize
mind.
this,
yes.
Yeah,
Let's
let
now
me bring
speak-
it,
narrow it
yes,
down.
into
Let
our
me
context.
bring it
Break
on the
down to
ground.
us, yes.
As you were saying, principally, or how the law is written, it is really fair. No one would think that there is denial.
How it is written.
Yes.
But what about practice?
Anyway,
but-
before he
but-
keeps
Let him finish.
But-
yes,
but-
because he's actually,
Yeah,
he has a
but
right
if someone
to reply.
goes
Yes.
and you might come, I'm a doctor, then I ask you, what service do you want, ABCD, what do you do? And sometimes you might shy away because you're a sex worker and you won't say, I'm a sex worker. And if you say it, of course, someone won't tell you, go back, I'm not treating you. But if someone sits and say, okay, what do you want, what do you do, all sort of things, and say, okay, be seated outside. And at the end of the day, you tell me that was not denial, that was not discrimination. And what do we want to hear? If people are telling you, this is what I'm facing,
Right.
and we cooperate with the Ministry of Health to train healthcare providers, please don't discriminate these people. Because we get cases from the beneficiaries themselves. So could we say you are lying? Unless we do a research and sit, say a sex worker has come for medical examination, and then we put maybe a surveillance camera to capture everything and say, at least you are lying.
Does that concern you, Jean Bosco? That indeed...
Anyway, let me base on what he said. Honestly, I'm saying, I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor myself. I am an economist and a gender expert. But I don't see any Rwandan doctor. You've visited doctors.
But you wouldn't see
I don't
without practicing.
No, I'm saying I've visited.
What he
myself,
practiced,
I've
yes.
visited. But I don't see a doctor visiting doctor and then puts me on an examination before treating that. What is your profession? Then he says, I'm a civil servant. Then he says, sit
You
here.
sit there.
I don't.
So you
No,
still don't agree
do you see
with
it
what
yourself? I don't see it.
I mean, I would already see
I
it
don't
if I
see
worked
it
with them
honestly.
directly in terms of
Number
going to
two,
meet them.
number two, I am wondering which perspective is. We are talking about the local context. We are talking about service delivery. We are talking about what we are hearing on the ground. Honestly, I don't see people being denied of services depending on where
the kind of trade they do.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to take a very short break. Of course, we're going to come back and read your tweets. I hope you're tweeting if you really have a perspective, a different one from what you've been hearing from our panelists. I'm happy to read your thoughts concerning what they've been saying, the statements that have been made right on this program, and your own perspective on this particular issue. When we come back, we'll talk about that call for legalization or actually removal of sex work from the penal code. We'll want to hear your thoughts whether this will be a solution to dealing with this issue. Those who are actually pro this have been saying that it will actually help in making access to very important rights to the sex workers be very easy. We'll talk about that when we come back. Keep tweeting, #InFocusRW. That is the hashtag I'm following throughout this conversation. We'll be back in a moment.
Many people have been asking what we have been up to. Well, we have told the different stories from decision makers, but this time round, it will be different. We will be getting head to head with various influencers and get to the heart of the matter. It is not an easy ride, but we'll endeavor to get you there. It will be insightful, informative, and at times we will agree to disagree because we are the bridge to your leaders.
Magic FM.
ku isaha rero y'isa 10:18 of course ni Magic Drive turi kumwe mpaka isaa 1 z'umugoroba. dukomeje kudutega amatwi kuri 90.7 Magic FM ace kumwe na Gerard ndetse na Michelle Iradukunda.
nanone iki ni ikiganiro Magic Morning mwumva kuva kwa mbere kugera kuri gatano tugikora kuva saa 2 za mitondo kugera saa 3 za mu gitondo nimukure urushyi.
Actually taking a look through the tweets that have been coming through. Thank you so much for keeping them coming. I'm actually going to read all of them non-diplomatically. Of course, keep them coming. In Focus RW. We are talking about the sex workers dilemma. Of course, what should be done in dealing with those in sex work, and of course, how to bring them off that job, whether it is actually necessary or should they be given their rights to actually continue doing those jobs just as others. And I have right here in studio who's Chris, who's the Human Rights Officer at HDI. And of course, we also have Jean Bosco, who's the Director of Women Economic Empowerment at the Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion. We have talked more about the perspective of sex work from the look of things as far as women are concerned, and the men who we are looking at mostly as the clients or the customers. But let's talk about also the need to actually, those who are actually practicing this, in ensuring that they are actually safe. You have actually been talking about their rights as far as access to medical cover. In other countries, like in India, for instance, there was a poster of an event that they were calling for due to Labor Day, during the Labor Day celebrations. They said sex work is work, just like any other work. And so the sex workers demand for rights to having, social security service, be protected just like any other people. In the context of Rwanda, is this something that, as a human rights, officer, is this something that you would also be advocating for sex workers in Rwanda?
Actually, I would say not, unless they come up and feel or say publicly that's what they want. As a human rights officer from one organization, I don't think I should be thinking or have expectations for the whole of the group, almost 5,000, 6,000. And I think if they come out and demand for it, and the Rwandan society feel it should be granted, it should be.
So what rights are you advocating for as a human rights officer at HDI? What do you do there then? If you can't take the initiative yourself, if you feel this is needed, and say that I'm waiting for them to do it themselves, then what are you doing?
For us, our entry point is health, right to health. We want them not to be discriminated against in terms of medical treatment.
Right.
We want them to be treated as part of Rwandan society. And, of course, fair treatment. When it comes to medical, if anyone has a problem, should never be discriminated because, as my colleague said, the Constitution is liberal. Our Article 21, right to health, to all Rwandans, very straight and has a full stop at the end. So anyone can interpret that from that any perspective of the angle.
Jean Bosco.
Yes.
To legalize or not to legalize? To remove from the penal code or not to remove from the penal code?
Actually, the starting point is that when you see what's in the occupational demand list of Rwanda and the region, that occupation is not included. Number two, according to the data we capture on the establishment census, we don't have an indicator capturing that. What is the stake of the government? It means people should go into those ventured decent jobs that have been put in place, should look at available opportunities, and should shift from non-risk to risk-free ventures. So look at the penal code that we've been having since 2012. Of course, it criminalizes. Saying that the one that is being revised might have some provision that decriminalizes doesn't mean that it's being legalized.
What does it mean? Because expansion that, because people would look at it.
What it means is that our stand, people should come and take up the available good opportunities that puts them into safe environment. None other than having that occupation.
Right. You spoke of something, and of course, it is definitely one of the things that was spoken about by some of the officials at HDI.